Am I the asshole for not being attracted to my husband and speaking to other men? This is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. Been married to my husband for 13 years now. That's so long. Did not have the most romantic relationship when we first started dating. He's a molecular scientist, which means he's very heady. There is not one single romantic bone in this man's body. Of course, he's always been kind and sweet and considerate. When we first started dating, we would go out on fun dates. Loved hiking, rafting, mountain biking. But when it came to romantic dates, he had no clue. I was the one that would ask him if he wanted to go to dinner. Made the first move when I kissed him. In fact, he didn't even kiss me back. During the first year of our relationship, he was very unaffectionate. I was always telling him how I wanted him to kiss me or hug me. He would just shy away. I clearly underestimated just how shy he was because of the fact that he never initiated anything. At first I thought that he might have been gay, but it was proven wrong when we had done it for the first time. I mean, he went through it and he was excited and it happened. But still, there was always a lack of affection. When we greeted each other, I would be the one to kiss him. He would just put his arm around me momentarily. I wanted to accept that this is just his personality, but I just couldn't. I wanted romance and passion. I just wasn't getting even a little bit of that from him. Not even with his words. He never gave me compliments the way that I did. I would compliment him all the time. If you're wondering if I was attracted to him then, I was. In fact, I was very attracted to him. I was definitely attracted to him physically, yes. He was in great shape at the time that we met, but I was also attracted to his mind. He was very determined and disciplined. He was also incredibly intelligent and wrote really well. For all of these reasons, I fell in love with him. He also did treat me well, although he wasn't as affectionate as I wanted him to be. But it just kept getting worse and worse. I would be the one to spend the night at his place all the time. He never offered to come over to my apartment, so eventually I moved in with him. This led to us fighting almost every single night because he never wanted to do it. I would ask him what was wrong and he would say nothing, I'm just tired. Or he gave me the classic answer of my head hurts. I couldn't believe it because I was definitely out of his league. I was the one that was constantly getting hit on. No matter where I went, I was always getting hit on. He knew this but didn't care. He also happens to not be jealous at all, which at first I did like this because it meant that we wouldn't have problems about him being controlling or not trusting me. But eventually I started thinking that it meant he didn't care if other men hit on me. Therefore, he didn't care if I talked to other guys or cheated on him. When I asked him one time if he would forgive me if I cheated, he said, yeah, of course. I also have many male friends and I would hang out with them all the time. And I know that this is probably stupid, but I wanted him to get jealous and he never did. He would say, go have fun, which at the end of the day, I know is a blessing to be with somebody who is not jealous because he gives you your freedom. But it made me feel like he just didn't care about me. That in combination with the fact that he barely ever touched me, it was really alarming. Finally threatened to break up with him after 3 years. I told him I wanted a man that was attracted to me, that loved me, that touched me, that kissed me, a man that does all the things he wants to do to his partner, in a loving way, of course. And to this, he just said, wow, that's really annoying that you have to bring that up right now. At the time, he was working on a thesis and doing a bunch of work stuff. I knew it was a very stressful time for him, but I wondered why he never wanted to be with me. I would think if you're stressed with work, you'd want to spend time with your partner and vent to them and be with them. But no, it was the opposite with him. He prioritized his job, which I understood. When he was working, he was always trying to be alone. Fast forward and we've been together 12 years. He still is kind and considerate and loving. He'll make me food, wash my clothes. I do plenty of things for him as well, but I'm the more romantic one. So I'm constantly trying to ask him if he wants to go out on a date. But the problem is I've lost all attraction to him. He doesn't prioritize his health anymore, so he's gained weight. Of course, I never want to make him feel bad, so it's not like I can tell him, hey, can you get back in shape? Recently, I started hanging out with old friends, and this led me to seeing older friends. 2 of them being men that I knew were attracted to me back in the day. One of them didn't realize I was married and asked me out on a date. I was so tempted to say yes, but I did give him my number. He's been texting me and it's been exciting. He voices how attractive he thinks I am. And yes, he knows that I'm married, but it's still just fun. I want to experience some sort of passion. I want to be held and loved. I want to be desired. Is that so bad? I told my husband that I needed more from him, i.e. passion, and he basically told me that wasn't in the cards with us. That we're at a point in our relationship where we're a married couple, and that married couples don't have passion in their relationships. Therefore, I should just get used to it. Another old friend started texting me and I've been texting him consistently. And it makes me feel good to be desired by these guys. I don't feel guilty at all. Should I stop talking to them or should I divorce my husband? What should I do? Self-care sister out.
My boyfriend tricked me into having sex with his twin brother. Disclaimer is not my story time. It was sending me on Instagram. That's when he made his twin brother go to our first date as a joke. Obviously, I didn't even know he was a twin. So when this guy shows up to the restaurant, I'm like, oh hey. 15 minutes into the date, he starts laughing maniacally. That's when my real date comes out of the bathroom, and they both start pointing and laughing at me. That's when I understood what was going on. My real date sent his twin brother. Here's the thing, they look exactly the same. They even have the same moles in the same places, same exact haircut, and they even have the same tattoo on their necks. And they're both really hot. Their bodies are sculpted to a T, and their faces look like Greek gods. Finally, his brother left, and it was just me and my date. We hit it off and had a great time. Everything was really rushed though. A week later, he asked me to be his girlfriend and I didn't know what to say. He begged me for about 3 days. When I finally said yes, I told him that it was on a trial basis. That's when odd things started happening. He once again started sending his brother on dates with me. After I'd get home from a date, he would text me to say, "How's my brother?" I kept falling for it. Part 3 is my boyfriend tricked me into having sex with his twin brother. Disclaimer is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. I finally asked my boyfriend to stop sending his brother on dates with me. He said that it was just too funny and that they both thought it was hilarious. So I asked him if he was getting off on the idea of me and his brother together. Then he said, "Why? Would you like that?" And I said, "Of course not. I like you, not your brother." Then he said, "But we're exactly the same." Then he says, "What if you already did it with my brother and you just don't know it?" It actually took me a minute to think about it. I mean, how could I know? They both look exactly the same. At this point, I had given my boyfriend a key to my apartment. Big mistake. Later on that night, I'm dead asleep in bed. I hear my door open and I see that it's my boyfriend. Or at least who I thought was my boyfriend. He climbs into my bed and we have sex. I'm half asleep, but I was still open to it. The next morning, he's gone. I call my boyfriend and ask him why he left. Then he says, "What are you talking about? I was never in your apartment." I literally could have shat my bed. Then he said, "You actually fell for it?" That wasn't me, that was my brother. That's when he asked me if I would be open to a relationship with the two of them. Apparently, his brother is obsessed with me. What should I do? My boyfriend tricked me into having sex with his twin brother. Disclaimer, it's not my story time. It's on my Instagram. My boyfriend is the most obnoxious man I've ever met. We started dating 3 months ago. When I met him, I really wasn't into him at all. I met him through friends, and when we would all hang out, he was always the loudest one. He was always making the most inappropriate jokes and was always seeking attention from everyone else. I'm the complete opposite. I like to listen to people speak. I never raise my voice and I don't try to be obnoxiously loud. So I thought he was the biggest piece of shit when I met him. I couldn't relate at all to him. Then he came up to me at a party and started talking to me. That's when I found out that we had a lot of things in common. One of the things that we kept talking about was role playing. I'm into role playing, but I like to keep it safe. Whereas he likes to do some crazy stuff. He's into things like rape fantasies. I told him I was not interested in that, but we kept seeing each other through friends. Finally, after about a month, he asked me out on a date and I said yes. At this point, I knew that he was loud and obnoxious, but he was funny and made me laugh all the time. And I love a guy that can make me laugh. On our first date, he sent his twin brother as a joke. Thought it was hilarious that I confused them. Part 2. Story time about how my husband died and his best friend won't leave me alone. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. My husband and I were married for almost a decade. During that time, we had 2 kids. And of course, his passing was completely devastating to our families. And 2 weeks after my husband died, I was still grieving. But his best friend started coming around our house a lot. First, he was very emotional. Him and my husband were best friends for about 7 years. They saw each other almost every day. Not only did they work together, but they also would go to the gym together and pretty much hang out all the time. So I know this guy really, really well. When my husband would invite him over, I never got the feeling that he liked me. I mean, sure, sometimes I caught him staring at me, but I'm beautiful, so I understand. So after my husband passed, he started coming over as in, "I want to take care of you," and we would just kind of cry together. I took this as his way of trying to help my husband, so I just thought he was being really sweet. But exactly 1 month after my husband passed away, he started asking me weird questions. Number 1, do you want to start dating again? Number 2, don't you feel lonely at night? Number 3, you're still so young and beautiful. You need to give yourself a chance with someone else. Mind you, I'm still grieving. To these questions, I would usually say no. Obviously, I mean, why would I even be thinking about those things? I didn't put too much mind to the questions, but a few days later, he came over after he had been at a bar. As soon as I opened the door to him, he said, "Can I kiss you?" And then he did without me saying yes. Part 2. Story time about how my dead husband's best friend won't leave me alone. Disclaimer, is not my story time. Was sending me on Instagram. As soon as I opened the door, he asked me if he could kiss me and I didn't say anything. And he grabbed me and just started kissing me. Of course, I pushed him away and told him that he needed to leave. That's when he said, "But you didn't say no." I told him I didn't say anything because I was shocked he would even ask me that. That's when he walked into the house without me inviting him, went straight to the fridge and opened up a beer. Then he starts yelling at me for giving him mixed signals. He says that since my husband died, all I've been doing is flirting with him. Since when is grieving flirting? I told him that he was completely wrong and that he needed to leave again. Then he said, "No, I'm not leaving here until you tell me the truth." That I was secretly in love with him and that I actually wanted to be with him. No, this wasn't funny to me at all. He was slurring his words and barely could stand up. I knew my kids were upstairs, so all I wanted to do was get him out of the house. That's when I grabbed my phone and started texting one of my other husband's best friends. I texted him 911, "Please come to our house now." He responded right away saying, "I'm coming over." After another minute of this guy ranting at me, I told him I was sorry for giving him mixed signals and that was never my intention, blah, blah, blah. Then he asked me out on a date. He said that he wanted to take me out and show me a good time. I said no, and I asked him to leave again, but he wouldn't. Finally, someone knocks on the door. Part 3 is story time about how my dead husband's best friend won't leave me alone. Disclaimer, is not my story time. Instead of me on Instagram. That's when he asked me out on a date and started walking closer to me. Finally, someone knocked on the door, and it was my other husband's friend who I texted to come help me. I ran over to the door quickly and I opened it. That's when my husband's best friend, who was drunk in my house asking me out on a date, forcing me to kiss him, tells the other guy that he needs to leave. So I asked the other friend if he could just take this guy home. He said, "Yeah, of course." And he told him, "You're drunk. I'm gonna take you home now." They left together without incident and I was really relieved. But after that, I knew to watch my back now. So here's what happened. He started texting me every now and then asking me if I wanted to go to dinner, and I would not even respond to him. And after that, he started showing up to different places I was at. For example, I go to Pilates classes 5 times a week. This place is near my house, and one day he just showed up trying to take a class. As soon as I saw him, I told the instructor and they kicked him out. That's when he came back and said that he did nothing wrong and that he deserved to be in the class too. He even paid the year up front, so they had no choice but to let him in. Instead, I left. Then he followed me outside to the parking lot and told me that I needed to relax. Said it's not like I'm following you, which he clearly was. I got in my car and left. That very same night, he sent me a message apologizing for acting crazy. Then he told me that all he wanted was just to be close to me and the kids. By the way, my kids really do love him. They ask about him all the time since he stopped coming over, and I don't even know what to tell them. After a few weeks of him not acting crazy, he asked me if he could come over and I said yes. Decided to invite all my husband's friends and we had a nice dinner. But again, this guy asked me out. I said no, but my best friend thinks I should give him a shot. He's good looking and rich. What do you guys think?
Story time about how my sister kicked me out of her baby shower. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister, but her husband and her are extremely stingy. When she told the family that she was pregnant, we were all incredibly happy for her. I was so happy that I decided to help her plan the baby shower. And then her best friend jumped on board, so we were both helping out with the baby shower. I asked my sister to make me a Pinterest board so that I could know exactly what colors she wanted and what the theme should be. I even went ahead and hired caterers, an entire wait staff, and my sister's best friend was in charge of all the decorations, which this girl put her own money into. This baby shower was the most curated, beautiful baby shower you could ever imagine in your entire life. We even had a 7-foot table filled with charcuterie board stuff. Charcuterie boards are really expensive. When we started the planning, my sister's husband decided to foot the bill, but me being the best sister that I am, and her best friend being a very good friend, we also decided to pitch in. But then the shit hit the fan. A week before the baby shower, her husband started asking us about how much everything cost. We even made a spreadsheet about all the costs and receipts. That's when he decided that he didn't want to pay for any of it. He said that we chose the most expensive things and that because they didn't plan it, they shouldn't have to pay for it. Mind you, he said this to us after we had spent 8 hours decorating the entire backyard. I looked at my sister to see her reaction and she had none. Instead of defending us, my sister did not say a word. I went up straight to her and I said, "Are you kidding me? Are you guys actually joking right now?" To which she said, "Nobody asked you to plan this." I broke down into tears because I had taken days off of work to try to plan the whole thing. Part 2 is up. Storytime about how my sister kicked me out of her baby shower. Part 2. I couldn't believe my sister was telling me that I had to pay for the baby shower because I planned it. I'm her sister. Of course I would help her plan the baby shower. She probably would have found an excuse to get mad at me for not helping if I didn't. Anyway, remember her best friend who was helping me out? We both decided to be petty. I mean, we had already hired the caterers, the tables, chairs, so we went ahead and started canceling everything. Mind you, it's the day of the baby shower. So I called up all the companies and tried to cancel, but they said it was too late. So my sister's bestie and I decided to show up to the baby shower like nothing happened. But here's what we did instead. We told them that as soon as they show up to the party to ask for payment. So the caterer shows up and asks for the money. That's when my sister's husband looks at me and tells me to fuck off. And he proceeded to kick me out and my sister's best friend. That's when the florist shows up and asks for payment too. It was all happening at the same time because we asked everyone to deliver everything at the same time. Essentially, he was ripping out his hair and going crazy, and I just watched. Then he went around to our family table and told my parents that I didn't pay for anything. Obviously, I had already told my parents about this. That's when my dad tells him that it's his responsibility to pay for it. Then my sister and him double down and kick us out again. My parents were so upset. I don't speak to my sister anymore and she's already had the baby. My mom thinks I should be the one to extend the olive branch and just forgive her, but her husband legitimately scares me. It seems to me like he's been able to brainwash her, and I just don't want to be in the middle of it. But now I have a new bestie, and all is good. Bye. I'm attracted to my father-in-law, and I kind of want to hook up with him. Disclaimer is not my story time. Was sending me on Instagram. I decided to start flirting with him a little bit more. I kind of wanted to see what he would say. My parents-in-law invited me and my husband over to their house for barbecue. So I decided to wear a thong bikini. My father-in-law was grilling in the backyard and my mother-in-law was inside making a salad. So of course, I took off all my clothes and I pranced around the pool in my thong bikini. I positioned myself perfectly so that my father-in-law had a great view of my ass. I also went up to him and started talking. I would touch his shoulder every now and then. That's when he said, "If I didn't know any better, I would think that you're flirting with me." Then he smiled. I almost died. I laughed with him too. And then my stupid husband came outside. That was 2 days ago. You guys tell me, but in my opinion, it sounded like he was liking it. For the rest of the barbecue, every time I would turn to look at him, he was always looking at me, so I knew it was working. But now I'm like, what's the goal? Do I really want to ruin my relationship with my husband and ruin his parents' relationship? Or do you think we can keep it on the down low? What should I do? I'm attracted to my father-in-law and I kind of want to hook up with him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. My husband and I met a little over a year ago. We actually met on vacation and we happened to live in the same city, so we decided to go on a date when we got back. 2 months later, we got engaged. My family was completely against it though. My parents
parents thought it was way too quick for us to get married. But here's the thing, I'm 32 and I was desperate at that point for somebody to just ask me to marry them. And looking back, that was completely wrong of me. My parents were so against it that when they met my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, they told him that we should just date a little bit longer before we even decided to get engaged. But of course, eventually we made the decision on our own and my parents just had to deal with it. By the time we had gotten engaged, I had only met his mom. His dad traveled a lot for work, so he was pretty much never home. So here's a little backstory on my husband. He was born in the same city I was, and his parents had him when they were 14 and 15. They were incredibly young. So his parents were more like his friends. They had so much fun and hung out together. It was always a really good time. We decided to have an engagement party, and that's when I met his dad. And it was infatuation at first sight. Part 2 is
am I the asshole for manipulating my best friend into breaking up with her boyfriend because I like him? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My best friend and I have known each other for about 3 years. Now, there has always been jealousy between us. We're very competitive because we're both models, and we're always trying to one-up each other with the jobs we get. Luckily, we both do pretty well. We both modeled for Kylie Cosmetics, and we both have OFs. If you know, you know. When it comes to men, we both tend to go for the same type of guy. And yes, he's always a little bit toxic and a little bit abusive. Usually we date rappers, influencers, athletes, actors, or models. And I can guarantee these men are always insecure, which is why they become so toxic. Well, this time around, my bestie decided to start dating a regular guy. He works at an office and he's not toxic at all. In fact, he's got money, stability, doesn't have any mental health issues. Obviously, seeing the fact that she got with somebody who was healthy made me feel like I wasn't doing enough. And after meeting this guy, I realized just how good he is. He's also pretty attractive. I knew that their relationship would not be good for me. I became extremely envious. I was angry at her all the time. That's when I started making up lies about him to my best friend. Told her that he would stare at me a lot and that it made me uncomfortable. Part 2 is up. Am I the asshole for manipulating my best friend into breaking up with her boyfriend because I liked him? Disclaimer, is not my story time. That's when I started making up straight up lies about him. I told my best friend that he would stare at me and that it made me uncomfortable. And when I told her this, she went crazy on him. She actually confronted him in front of me. Trust me, I wasn't expecting her to do that, but he went out of his way to apologize to me and told me that he didn't mean to make me uncomfortable. And he said that if he even stared at me, it was probably a mistake. Y'all, I know he didn't stare at me. I was lying, but he still apologized to me. This is when I realized just how good a guy he is. And this made me want him even more. I was angrier and more jealous than ever. My envy levels were through the roof. Every time they went out on a date, I would try to sabotage it somehow. I'd go over to her house to help her get ready and randomly start doing her makeup and force her to be late. One time I even pretended to drop a glass of water and I wet her hair just so that she would be late to the date. And it started working. They began fighting and she would tell him that he had no patience with her and he started calling her flaky. This is when I had to go to Instagram. I made an account and pretended to be another girl. I started messaging him but he wasn't replying. What I did next is bad. Part 3 is that's when I slid into my bestie's boyfriend's DMs pretending I was somebody else. Disclaimers are not my story time. I spent 2 weeks creating this fake account. I found a random Brazilian model online. I basically stole all her Instagram pictures. I went ahead and made the account and started posting every single day, multiple times a day. And I even started posting on the stories, like stealing her pictures and pretending it was uploaded from that day. I was really good at it. I started messaging him, but nothing. Eventually, I replied to one of his stories and he did end up seeing that one, but he didn't reply. So I knew I had to take it a step further. I know that he's in financing, so I reached out to him with a question about finance. This is when he replied. He offered to give me a free consultation online. Instead of saying yes to that right away, I started asking him questions and he was answering. But eventually I asked him what city he was living in and if he wanted to hang out. This is when he politely said that he would go out with me, but that he has a girlfriend and that nothing could happen. Told him I was new in town and that I needed friends. He sent me a list of restaurants that I could go to. I mean, how nice is he? But still he kept it really professional. So I took all of the evidence and I went to my best friend. She hit the roof. She completely believed everything I said. It only took me 2 hours to convince her to leave him. Part 4. Once I convinced my best friend to break up with her boyfriend because I wanted him, everything was easy. I showed her the Instagram DMs, which weren't really that bad, but she still got really mad at him. She even thanked me for going out of my way to prove that he was a lying cheater. According to her, the fact that he even would message this girl back shows that he had an intention to speak to her, even though he didn't actually agree to hang out with her. And I have to agree with that. She ended up breaking up with him that very same day. Then he messaged me asking if I could try to help him get back with her. Of course I said no, but now my goal is to try to get with him. I feel like this is going to be really hard because he's such a good guy, and also I need to keep it secret from my best friend. But I want a man like this, someone loyal and kind. I actually ended up telling my mom about my plan and she tells me not to do it. I know that you guys are probably going to tell me not to do it, but where am I going to find a man like this? Everyone I meet is either an actor or a stupid rapper. Sure, they have money, they're always toxic and abusive. I'm sick of getting ghosted. What should I do? Or should I just leave him alone?
Story time about how I asked my girlfriend to marry me 3 times and she said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I'm a 27-year-old male. My girlfriend is 33. We started dating 2 years ago. A couple of months in, we started talking about marriage and she sounded really open to it. My dream has always been to get married and have kids. I never thought I would fall in love this hard. I have dated girls before, but I have never put in this much effort. To tell you that I took her to meet my parents 2 weeks after I met her, and even after 2 years, I keep falling in love with her. I'm really close to my parents and I decided to tell them that I wanted to marry her. They told me to go for it. So I planned a very elaborate proposal. I even got her 2 best friends to help me. I hired a photographer, a videographer, and I got the type of ring that I knew she would love from Tiffany's. The day of the proposal, everything went perfect. She showed up looking absolutely beautiful, her friends were hiding behind a bush, and the photographer and the videographer got everything just at the right time. But guess what the problem was? She said no. She told me that she definitely didn't think we were ready for marriage or even to be engaged. This is a fundamental flaw. I don't agree with her. So 2 weeks later, I proposed again. And guess what she said? Part 2 is up. Story time about how I asked my girlfriend to marry me 3 times and she said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. So after she said no the first time, I decided to ask a second time. And this time she told me that she just wasn't convinced that I was the guy she wanted to marry. As you can imagine, this broke my heart. And I gotta tell you, I'm not a bad looking guy. I get hit on regularly by women. And all of the girlfriends I've had in my life that are just friends have told me that they would want to be in a relationship with a guy like me. I'm caring, kind, considerate, I'm funny. So for my girlfriend of 2 years to tell me that she wasn't convinced I was the guy for her broke me to my core. I even started questioning my manliness. Would I be a good provider? Would I be a good father? Do I even deserve these things? My girlfriend has been the only girl that has never chased me. I'm always the one getting chased by girls, and truthfully, it bores me. So maybe the fact that she's not chasing me is what keeps me interested in her, which I know is so messed up. Because maybe if she did say yes to marrying me, would I get bored of her? I asked her to marry me a 3rd time, and she said no again. My friends and family think I should break up with her, but I love her too much. I can't get enough of this girl. I want her to marry me. What should I do? Story time about how I asked my girlfriend to marry me 3 times and she said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. So after she said no the first time, I decided to ask a second time. And this time she told me that she just wasn't convinced that I was the guy she wanted to marry. As you can imagine, this broke my heart. And I gotta tell you, I'm not a bad looking guy. I get hit on regularly by women. And all of the girlfriends I've had in my life that are just friends have told me that they would want to be in a relationship with a guy like me. I'm caring, kind, considerate, I'm funny. So for my girlfriend of 2 years to tell me that she wasn't convinced I was the guy for her broke me to my core. I even started questioning my manliness. Would I be a good provider? Would I be a good father? Do I even deserve these things? My girlfriend has been the only girl that has never chased me. I'm always the one getting chased by girls, and truthfully, it bores me. So maybe the fact that she's not chasing me is what keeps me interested in her, which I know is so messed up. Because maybe if she did say yes to marrying me, would I get bored of her? I asked her to marry me a 3rd time, and she said no again. My friends and family think I should break up with her, but I love her too much. I can't get enough of this girl. I want her to marry me. What should I do? My boyfriend confessed that he thinks I'm ugly. Here is the long requested update. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. After he told me that he would not marry me because he didn't consider me as pretty as I should be, I started asking him what he would change about me. Can you believe he sat down on his phone and made a list? An actual damn list. First on his list was, I was too heavy. He told me I needed to lose at least 20 pounds. I figured that shouldn't be too hard, so I got on a diet. Then he told me he preferred my natural hair color, which is brown. So I stopped dyeing my hair blonde and went completely brown. Oh yes, and his last request was that I get lip filler. He said that my thin lips have always bothered him. Then he told me I should look at more makeup tutorials to figure out how to do my makeup. Then he told me that I should tan in the sun to get some nice color on me. I know you guys want me to break up with him. What if I make all these changes and I'm actually healthier and happier? Not just for him, but for me. Since I last spoke to you guys, it's been about 2 weeks. I've only lost 2 pounds, but I'm on my way. I ended up getting lip filler and I love it. My lips look pretty but not exaggerated, so it actually looks nice. I also got Botox and cheek filler even though he did not request this. And to be honest, my face looks a lot better. It actually does like my new hair though. And I started sitting out in the sun, although I will start fake tanning because I do not want to get wrinkles. Mostly because self-care sister told me not to and I trust this girl. Since making all these changes, he's actually been a little bit nicer to me. In exchange for me making all these changes, he's spending more time with me and going out less with his friends. He's even taking me out on dates twice a week. Before I started making all these changes, I was always trying to look like something I wasn't. I was obsessed with being blonde and contouring, and he basically begged me not to contour anymore. So I asked Esther to do a tutorial for me, which she said she's gonna post. I feel like all he really wants me to do is focus on my self-care, and I'm totally willing to do that. I'll have to keep you guys updated, but so far so good. I did get myself a trainer and he actually got jealous, which I think is a good sign, right? Self-care sister out. My best friend always projects her insecurities onto me. Should I break up with her? My best friend and I have known each other for exactly 2 years. We met in college and hit it off right away. We're both Latinas and we come from really big families. I have 2 other sisters and we get along really well. We always hype each other up and have each other's backs. A few months after I started my friendship with my best friend, let's call her Lucia. Lucia started showing some really toxic qualities. Sometimes I think I'm just reading too much into it or overreacting. So you let me know. First of all, she would start talking bad about my sisters in front of me. She would make comments like, wow, your sister's gained weight, or wow, your sister has cellulite. When she first did this, I would just defend my sisters, but then I realized that just made her want to keep talking more trash. So if she ever said anything about my sisters, I wouldn't say anything. At the time our friendship started, I had a really big crush on this guy. He and I went to the same gym and I never had the courage to speak to him, not until my sister convinced me to. I finally spoke to him at the gym and we actually hit it off. We would work out together every now and then and he finally asked me out on a date. The day of our date, my best friend came over to my house, and while I was getting ready, she started saying really weird things. At first, she told me that I should wash my hair because it looked oily. I told her my hair was freshly washed. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I could see her reflection and she just rolled her eyes at me. This is when things started clicking. Part 2 is up. My brother-in-law keeps trying to hook up with me. Should I tell my jealous husband? That's when he started coming into my office to flirt with me. He would compliment everything about me. He would tell me that I had a great body, that I had a beautiful face. I know that he could visibly see how uncomfortable it made me, but he kept going. Of course, it never occurred to me to tell my husband because of how violent he gets when he's jealous. And he knew that, which is why he kept pushing it. One day, my husband and him went to a local bar after finishing up work at home. When they came home, my husband was completely wasted. My brother-in-law put my husband in our bed and told me that I should get him some water. I went down to the kitchen to grab my husband a bottle of water, but my brother-in-law followed me into the kitchen, cornered me up against the fridge and tried to kiss me. By the way, I could smell the alcohol on him, so I knew he was drunk. I pushed him away and told him not to touch me. That's when he started apologizing. He said, I thought you wanted it. As I started walking away, he grabbed my arm and kissed me. But the truth is, part of me liked it. Truthfully, I always found my brother-in-law very attractive. By the way, it's not like I just let him kiss me. I was trying to fight him off. When he let me go, I slapped him and I ran upstairs. Of course, I avoided him after that. A few days later, I was having dinner with my friends when my brother-in-law shows up at the restaurant and sits at a table right across from us. Proceeded to just stare at me the whole time. Finally got up to the bathroom and he followed me. That's when he grabbed me and kissed me again. Part 3 is up. My brother-in-law keeps trying to hook up with me. Should I tell my husband? My husband is a very, very jealous man. He can't stand it when I get hit on or even stared at. The few times that I've gotten hit on in front of him, he actually started a fight with the guy. So I basically live in fear of anybody hitting on me in front of him. He's also very jealous with our friends. I have a really big group of friends and a lot of them are males. He's outright told our male friends to not touch me or ever even hug me or kiss me when they see me. By the way, a lot of these guys are already married and in relationships. So the fact that my husband does that is just ridiculous. It's obviously humiliating to me. The only person my husband is not jealous of is his own brother. And at first I thought this was a good thing. His brother offered to move in with us while we were renovating our house. My husband and him basically work all day on the house. I get to work from home, so I'm usually in my own office. A few weeks ago, my brother-in-law started coming into my office. First, he would just talk to me, and then it turned into flirting. Then he started insinuating how good looking I was, how lucky my husband is. Part 2 is up. My brother-in-law keeps trying to hook up with me. Should I tell my husband? My husband is a very, very jealous man. He can't stand it when I get hit on or even stared at. The few times that I've gotten hit on in front of him, he actually started a fight with the guy. So I basically live in fear of anybody hitting on me in front of him. He's also very jealous with our friends. I have a really big group of friends and a lot of them are males. He's outright told our male friends to not touch me or ever even hug me or kiss me when they see me. By the way, a lot of these guys are already married and in relationships. So the fact that my husband does that is just ridiculous. It's obviously humiliating to me. The only person my husband is not jealous of is his own brother. And at first I thought this was a good thing. His brother offered to move in with us while we were renovating our house. My husband and him basically work all day on the house. I get to work from home, so I'm usually in my own office. A few weeks ago, my brother-in-law started coming into my office. First, he would just talk to me, and then it turned into flirting. Then he started insinuating how good looking I was, how lucky my husband is. Part 2 is up. This is how I found out my dad was following me on OnlyFans. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, it's not on Instagram. My mom and dad had me when they were really young. My mom was 17 and my dad was 19. For some reason, my mom doesn't like talking about him, so I never really found out exactly how they broke up. All I know is that they stayed together until I was 5 years old. Something really bad happened and then my mom kicked him out of the house. Like I said, I don't even know what happened. When I was 12 years old, he begged my mom to come back, and she let him live in the apartment we had. But he's pretty much a deadbeat. He didn't help my mom pay for the bills. He didn't even want to get a job. He even went as far as begging my mom to become a stripper. He said that she would make way more money than the job she had. She was a secretary at the time. When I was 15, he left our house again. I never got a bad feeling from him when he was living with us though. With a lot of hard work, my mom was able to put me through college. I graduated and I got a really good job. I bought my mom and me a house and we moved in together. Then COVID happened and I lost my job. Of friend suggested I start OnlyFans and I decided to do it. I started making a lot more money than I ever thought I would. Some months I was making around $20,000. This one guy would send me $1,000 every single week. In exchange for pictures. Part 2 is up. This is how I found out my dad was following me on OnlyFans. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's let me on Instagram. So this one guy started sending me $1,000 every single week. In exchange, I would send him private photos. Everything was totally fine until he started asking me questions. He would ask me things like, what's your favorite movie? What's your favorite dessert? Because it's OnlyFans, I never really answered honestly. But then one day he told me, you love The Little Mermaid, don't you? And I was like, what? Because The Little Mermaid was my favorite movie as a kid. Watched it at least 3 times a week when I was a kid. First I thought it was a cousin playing a joke on me, so I decided to block them. The next day, I get another message. This one says, I remember how you used to love hot dogs. That's when I really shit myself. Because my dad and I would make hot dogs every single Friday. It was our thing together. Like I said, he was a deadbeat, so he couldn't afford anything more than cheap hot dogs. And that's when he said, I have a confession. And before I could reply, he said, I'm your dad. I felt so disgusted. I blocked him and then blocked him from my cell phone too. That's when he sends me a long text message explaining why he signed up to my OnlyFans. He said that he was just trying to get to know me, that all he really wanted was to get me back as his daughter. Then why ask for nudes? Part 3 is up. This is how I found out my dad was following me on OnlyFans. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. As soon as I read his long text message about why he signed up, I once again blocked him. 20 minutes later, there's a knock on my door. Yep, it's my fucking father. Started knocking on the door so hard my neighbors came out. Called 911 and they came within a minute. I live in an area where there aren't too many people, so my house is really easy to find. Saw my dad walk to the backyard and try to get in through the back. That's when a cop stopped him and asked him what he was doing. Then he told the cop that I had invited him over. Then the cop comes to my door and asked me if I had invited him. I told him I didn't. Then I told the cop about OnlyFans. My dad was so ashamed he actually denied it. But of course I had all the receipts. I showed the cop my phone and the cop told him that he needed to leave me alone. He left my house and I didn't have the heart to tell my mom. But later that night I see another person sign up to my OnlyFans. Turns out it was my dad again. This time he was offering me $3,000 for more pictures. And he confessed that he couldn't help but love me as a woman because I didn't grow up with him. Excuse me, sir? You raised me for half of my childhood. Wanted to get a restraining order, but the judge says it's not that easy. So now I'm considering closing my OnlyFans. I don't think it's fair though. What should I do?